Nuclear war has haunted the imagination of filmmakers for decades, not just as spectacle, but as a slow, terrifying unraveling of everything we call civilization. Some of these films imagine how it might begin. Others show what happens after the blast. And a few never show the explosion at all, just the silence, fear, and grief it leaves behind. Here are 8 films that explore nuclear catastrophe in ways you won't forget. When The Day After aired on American television, over 100 million people watched, including President Reagan, who wrote in his diary that the film was realistic and deeply depressing. Set in Kansas, the movie shows ordinary people caught in the fallout of a US-Soviet nuclear war, triggered by escalating tensions in Germany. What makes the film so powerful is how it builds up the lives of its characters before everything is destroyed. Some survive the blast, only to face a grim nuclear winter and slow deaths from radiation. The film was criticized. Some called it too tame, others too disturbing, but it started a national conversation. Even the Soviet Union aired it in 1987 during the Glasnost era. The Day After didn't go as far as it could have, but in the middle of Reagan's Star Wars era, it made one thing clear: nuclear war would change everything. If The Day After shocked American audiences, Threads went even further in the UK. This BBC production follows 2 families in Sheffield as rising Cold War tensions between the US and the Soviet Union spiral into nuclear war. Often described as the most realistic and disturbing nuclear war film ever made, Threads was written by Barry Hines with input from Carl Sagan. It begins as a grounded domestic drama, and then everything collapses. The film shows the aftermath in unflinching detail: fires, radiation burns, total social breakdown. But what makes Threads truly haunting is what comes after. With no food, no government, and no future, survivors are left to fend for themselves in a ruined world. One woman gives birth in a barn, dies blind and sick, and leaves behind a child who grows up feral, never knowing life before the bombs. Threads is difficult to watch, but impossible to forget. Probably the most famous film on this list, Dr. Strangelove, is one of those rare movies that's even more terrifying because it's a comedy. Stanley Kubrick uses razor-sharp satire to reveal just how absurd and dangerous Cold War logic really was. The story begins when a paranoid American general goes rogue and orders a nuclear strike on the Soviet Union. As the bombs fly, political and military leaders scramble to contain the disaster. But they're so caught up in ego, fear, and protocol that every decision only makes things worse. Peter Sellers delivers a masterclass in satire, playing 3 unforgettable roles: a British officer, the US president, and the bizarre Dr. Strangelove himself, a former Nazi scientist now advising the American government. Every character in the film behaves irrationally, revealing the dangerous absurdity of mutual assured destruction. Dr. Strangelove is hilarious, bleak, and frighteningly relevant, even today. Released the same year as Dr. Strangelove, Sidney Lumet's Fail Safe was largely overshadowed, but it definitely deserves attention. While Kubrick approached nuclear war with dark comedy, Fail Safe takes the same premise and plays it straight. During a routine military exercise, a US bomber group mistakenly receives orders to drop nuclear bombs on Moscow. The system fails, and no one can recall the planes. The president, played with quiet intensity by Henry Fonda, is left to negotiate with the Soviets and make an unthinkable decision to prevent all-out war. Fail Safe avoids showing mushroom clouds or destruction. Instead, the horror unfolds through phone calls, silences, and stark close-ups. There are no villains, just a chain of small mistakes, rigid systems, and impossible choices. Peter Watkins' The War Game won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature and was immediately banned from British television. Shot in the style of a newsreel, the film imagined a Soviet nuclear strike on Britain so realistic and disturbing that the BBC refused to air it. Their official statement called it too horrifying for the medium of broadcasting. The film presents a chillingly plausible sequence of events: rising international tensions, evacuation plans, and finally, the impact of a nuclear bomb hitting the town of Rochester. We see flash blindness, firestorms, and the collapse of emergency response. But the true horror comes after. Radiation sickness spreads, supplies run out, the population turns to suicide and violence. Filmed with stark realism, the war game doesn't feel like fiction. It feels like watching a future no one wants to see. Andrei Tarkovsky's final film is unlike any other on this list. The Sacrifice doesn't show nuclear war. Instead, it lingers on the silence just before it happens. The story follows Alexander, a former actor and intellectual, spending his birthday with family when news arrives. World War III is about to begin. What follows is not a depiction of disaster, but a spiritual crisis. As panic unfolds around him, Alexander searches for meaning, for redemption, and ultimately for something to give up in exchange for peace. The looming nuclear catastrophe is never fully shown, but its weight hangs over every word, every moment of silence, every desperate gesture. Tarkovsky blends philosophy, religion, and fear into something haunting and deeply personal. The Sacrifice is less about destruction and more about the human soul staring into the abyss and wondering what, if anything, can save us. The only animated film on this list, When the Wind Blows, is a quiet, devastating story told through hand-drawn images and stop-motion sets. With music by Roger Waters, David Bowie, and Genesis, it feels gentle at first, but becomes one of the bleakest depictions of nuclear war ever made. An elderly British couple, Jim and Hilda, calmly follow news of rising Cold War tensions. Trusting the government, they prepare for the worst by building a small fallout shelter in their home. But when the bomb actually falls, they're left alone among the ruins, confused, hopeful, and slowly dying from radiation. The tragedy of When the Wind Blows isn't just in the aftermath. It's in how little the characters understand what's happening to them. They talk about patriotism, past wars, and distant enemies, but none of it helps. Their innocence makes the horror even harder to bear. It's a tender, haunting film, and a powerful reminder that in war, the people who suffer most often have no idea why it's happening. Some nuclear films imagine what could happen. Black Rain shows what already did. Directed by Shohei Imamura, this haunting drama follows a family who survived the bombing of Hiroshima, but are slowly destroyed by its aftermath. The story takes place 14 years after the blast. The Shizuma family lives in the countryside, seemingly safe. But radiation sickness begins to surface, quietly and relentlessly. The bomb, referred to as the Thunder, still lives in their bodies, in their memories, and in their future. The film's opening scenes are among the most devastating ever filmed. We witness Hiroshima moments after the explosion. Burned figures stumbling through ruins, children searching for family, a city turned into a silent graveyard. And the horror never fully fades. But it doesn't rely on spectacle. Its power comes from stillness, silence, and the unbearable weight of survival. The tragedy here is layered, and Black Rain, like the event it portrays, leaves a lasting mark.